Hi, I'm Mike Stanton. It's August 7th. This is the BAM Weekly Muni Market Update. I'm here with Dan Bingham and Brian Babler from BAM's Capital Markets Desk. Thanks for being here, gentlemen. So another fascinating week in the muni market this week. Yields trended downwards for most of the week, moved up a little bit on a strong employment report on Friday. Dan, why don't you take us through what happened?
Sure, Mike. Thank you. Non-farm payrolls came in at 1.7 million, continuing the very large outsized sort of numbers that we've seen since the pandemic really hit, but continues the trend of the reopening economy and, on paper at least, very, very strong numbers. The unemployment rate dropped to 10.2%, continuing improvements that we've seen in that sector as well. More specific to the muni market, inflows of 1.6 billion in 13 straight weeks of inflows, and we've seen pretty dramatic numbers and actual gross numbers of the inflows for the year are now in the plus 4.5 billion. So it's a dramatic turnaround of what we saw back in April time frame and those dramatic outflows. So.
And those inflows are coming against a backdrop of flat to maybe even a little bit negative net supply, right?
Yeah, from the supply point of view, we've seen heavy supply issuance, 8 billion next week. Year to date supply numbers that are up pretty dramatically. But it's important to note that a large portion of that issuance has been in the taxable sector. So when you take out the taxable municipal portion of it, the supply side of the equation has been very manageable.
Transitioning over to the new issue market and what you saw this week, as Dan said, the top line number is down a little bit from those, $10 billion, $13 billion numbers we saw earlier in June, but BAM has remained really active. What did you see in the primary?
Yeah, per Dan's comments about inflows, it feels like pretty much anything is manageable, but I'd describe this week's new issue supply as manageable. Again, we saw about 8.2 billion priced in total. Most of that was on the negotiated side. The competitive market was noticeably quiet. There was less than $1 billion sold on the competitive side. And, most noticeably, there was only one deal bigger than 150 million and only two deals north of 50 million. So it really was a very quiet week, not a lot of pressure on underwriters putting their balance sheet to work in the competitive space. So the new issue market was pretty well received this week. Again, per Dan's comments, taxables were a heavier volume of this week's supply at about 45%, which is north of the average of about 35 or so % we've been seeing, which is still on the high end, but certainly a little bit more robust this week. Some of the biggest deals like Hawaii GO and Rutgers University, Baylor University, all came in the taxable space this week. So, a lot of attention was paid there. But for BAM, we had a very active week. We insured almost 30 deals for about 370 million in par. And along with the market, 3 out of our top deals were taxable. We did 90 million for Oxnard School District in California. That was priced by Raymond James. And that was a deal that's been on ice since the COVID upheaval in March. So it was nice to continue seeing these day-to-day deals come back into really constructive markets at high demand. On top of that, also taxable 50 million Miami Gardens was priced by Loop, and 30 million for SUNY Upstate Medical University was priced by Stifel. So a lot of activity there. One other highlight in terms of BAM's activity, it was a very nice week for the state of Florida, which has been a little bit on the quiet side the last few months. But in addition to the Miami Gardens deal I just mentioned, we also did 25 million for Lake Worth Beach in Florida and about 3.9 million for Pasco County Board of Ed in the state. So a good week in Florida for us. And then lastly, a very busy week for BAM's GreenStar program. We designated 3 of our deals as green with the BAM GreenStar. 2 of those were in Alabama for Tallahassee Water and Gas and Russellville Water and Sewer. And then also in the competitive space, we were used on Laurel, Mississippi Water and Sewer. So a good week for BAM GreenStar program.
And the second largest deal next week for BAM is also a GreenStar transaction. Why don't we talk about what's on the calendar?
Sure. Similar kind of look and feel. About 8.5, maybe 9 billion or so scheduled to price next week. So again, shouldn't be anything that the market is too worried about. It feels very much like an August week. The competitive market will be back. There's over 3 billion scheduled to price on the competitive side. But BAM will be active again. Overall, we've got about 270 million to price on the negotiated side. As you mentioned, one of those is going to be GreenStar, and that's going to be 41 million for the city of Meriden, Mississippi. That's going to be issued through the Mississippi Development Bank, sold by Piper. And then also we've got about 100 million for Centinela Valley School District. That's going to be sold by Ramirez in 2 series for different uses. But overall, we're anticipating another active week. As I mentioned, competitives will be very busy. We'll have lots of bids out on the competitive side. So we're anticipating another robust week.
Great. And Centinela Valley, of course, down in Los Angeles County in Southern California. A lot of demand on the local California market. So should be an interesting week to watch. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
When the market is unpredictable, BAM gives you certainty. In the face of market volatility and illiquidity, BAM insured municipal bonds deliver default protection, value preservation, and a durable AA rating from S&P. BAM's insurance protects against everything that causes a default, including natural disasters, financial fraud, pension issues, and economic disruption. So while America rebuilds, BAM has you covered. BAM. Build America Mutual. Talk to your investment advisor or visit buildamerica.com.